Without any further delay, I would now like to hand over the live meeting to your presenter, Susan. Susan, you have the floor now.
Awesome. That's all right then. Wow, nobody warned me I was going to be the last session of the summit. So you guys have probably already seen some fabulous content. I know I've seen some great stuff going on. And what I'm going to do today is I want to take you guys through sort of a certification 101, because some of the new benefits that are available for you guys as student partners. So my name is Susan Ibeck. I'm actually a technical evangelist in Canada. So I'm actually out in Niagara Falls at the moment, only about a 15-minute walk from I think the largest falls in the world in terms of volume of water. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking to you guys about certification. If you do have questions later on, you've got my email address there and my Twitter handle, Hockey Geek Girl, because I am a Canadian, and like most Canadians, I do love my hockey, so I do fit the stereotype. So let's just jump in and let me give you an idea of what I'm going to be covering in this session so you know what you're really going to get out of it. One of the benefits you have as a Microsoft student partner this year is the ability that if you were to publish a Windows 8 app to get the exams for the MCSD, Microsoft Certified Solution Developer, for free. Or if you do a demo, to get the exams for the Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate, MCSA, for Windows Server 2012 for free. So in this session, because a lot of you may have never actually taken a Microsoft certification exam before, basically I'm going to give you some tips on how to prepare for that exam, strategies on how to take the exam itself, and help you make sure you understand what's involved in going through that certification path. So that when you're done this session, you should really have a very straightforward action plan, step by step, of how to select, prepare for, and take your first step towards getting that Microsoft certification, which is a great benefit you have this year. So you've really got this awesome opportunity this year, because as a Microsoft student partner, for the first time, if we have this offering that if you actually publish an app in the Windows Store, that you can actually get the MCSD Windows Store exams for free. That can allow you to get your Windows Store certification. And also, if you were to create an actual demo for us, and all the details for this will all get announced to you in October in terms of exactly how do I say, hey, I've published my app, how do I get the exams, you'll get all that information in October. But again, also if you create a demo, you get to take the exams for the MCSA Windows Server 2012 exams for free. So that's a fabulous opportunity, because normally people have to pay for these exams to earn these certifications. So this is a really great benefit that we've added to the MSP program this year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the MSPs take advantage of it. Now, one of the things that often people don't realize when they're getting ready to take Microsoft exams is you probably already know some of the exam content. If you've published an app, which you would have to do to get the free MCSD exams, then you must know something about Windows 8 if you've published a Windows 8 app. And the stuff you learned by building that Windows 8 app, you're going to find some of that content you learned to build the app is going to be on the exam itself. And a lot of people are already playing with Windows Server 2012, and there are, of course, some things even in Windows Server, earlier versions of Windows Server that are similar to 2012. So you may be surprised by the fact that you already know some of the content that you're expected to prove you know during the exams itself. So the trick is figuring out how do I take what I already know and turn that into actual certification. So that's what I'm going to try and help you to do today. And there's basically 4 steps you've got to remember. First step, you've got to pick your certification goal. Figure out, am I going to go do a demo, get my MCSA, or am I going to get an MCSD? And there's actually 2 different MCSDs that I'm going to talk about, so you'll have to figure out which one you want to go for. So that's goal number 1. Just figure out what certification is it you want to get. Step 2 is find the gaps in your knowledge. There's no point in restudying what you already know. So the trick is to figure out what's on the exam that you don't know, so you can focus on that. Third step, fill those gaps. Once you've figured out what you don't know, then you want to use different resources to learn the stuff that you haven't played with before, so that you'll be ready when you actually do step 4 and take the exam itself. So that's basically what we're going to be covering today. We're going to go through those 4 steps, step by step, and talk about how do I choose my goal, how do I identify the gaps in my knowledge, how do I fill the gaps I have, and how do I prepare myself to take the exam itself, and what do I expect when I actually take the exam if you haven't done it before. So step 1, let's start there. How do I choose my certification goal? Well, as an MSP, this year, your goal is going to be most likely to get an MCSD or an MCSA, because those are the benefits we're giving you a chance to get for free. So for an MCSD, there's actually two different MCSDs you can earn, Microsoft Certified Solution Developer certifications for Windows Store apps. And basically the way it works is there is a set of exams that earn you a C# Windows Store app developer certification, or there are exams that earn you an HTML Windows Store app certification as a developer. So if you're more of a .NET developer, you've come from JavaScript going into, or you've done a lot of Java development, so you've entered C#, and you're going to go with C# and XAML for your Windows 8 apps, you're probably going to want to take the C# MCSD. If, on the other hand, you're more of a web developer with a really strong HTML background, or you've been maybe doing some game development with HTML, CSS, then you probably want to go with the HTML exams. For the MCSA, if you're more somebody who's got more of an administrator type background, a little less of a developer, then you probably want to create a demo and take advantage of the MCSA offering on Windows Server 2012, because that's not going to be developer so much as how to maintain and administer and work with Windows Server 2012. Any of these are going to be good, valuable certifications for when you get out and you're going into the workplace. Each of them are going to have great value in the workplace, but they just demonstrate different skills. Since it's your first certification, for most of you, I really recommend you start with the one where you go, well, I already know a little bit of that. Stick with what you know best and start with that. That's really the best way to go when looking at a certification. Go after the one you think is going to be the easiest for you. It's still going to take a bit of work. I mean, they're worth something. You shouldn't be able to get them just by, opening a box of Cracker Jacks or, getting it for free in the mail. Now, let's say you are a C# developer, or you're a Java programmer who's learning C#, because most Java programmers use C# for development on Windows 8 or Windows Phone. It's very similar. These 3 exams you would have to take to earn an MCSD for Windows Store apps C#. The first exam is the 7483. This is actually a programming in C# exam. There's only C# on this exam. That is all it's going to cover. You're not going to see anything about Windows 8 on this exam at all. So it's really purely the C# programming language. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be content on there that isn't particularly important in the Windows 8 Windows app world. For example, something like asynchronous programming. I can pretty much bet there's going to be something about asynchronous programming in C# on that exam, because when you're dealing with mobile applications, it's particularly important to use asynchronous type programming because you often have limited CPU and battery power on a device. So asynchronous programming is one of the key skills that we expect any C# developer to have. Then you've got 2 additional exams, the 7484 and the 7485 exams. These exams are really focused on if you're building a Windows Store app with C#, what do you need to know? So these exams are going to be quizzing you on things like, do you know how to use share contracts? Do you know how to implement the search contract? Do you know how to use Snap View and how to support portrait and landscape mode in your apps? That's where you're going to see those types of questions on the 484 and 485 exam. Live tiles, notifications. That's where you're going to see that. Those 3 exams together, once you've passed all 3, earn you your MCSD. So after you've passed all 3, you get a nice email saying, awesome, you rock, you are now an MCSD. It doesn't matter what order you take the exams in. If you want to take the Advanced Windows Store exam first, go for it. Doesn't matter, that's totally up to you. I'll give you a suggestion in a minute about which one I think you should take first, but it really is your choice what exam you take, but you don't have the certification until you've passed all 3. If you're more of an HTML programmer, if that's your space, you're coming as a web programmer, entering the world of development of Windows Store apps, then you're going to have, again, 3 exams to take, but it's going to be, first is an exam 7480, which is really an exam on programming in HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS3. So this is purely, again, there's going to be nothing in here about Windows 8. That first exam is purely about HTML, HTML5, JavaScript. You can see code snippets that talk about things like media queries, some of the new HTML5 types. There's a lot of HTML5 specifically you're definitely going to expect on that. They're not going to be quizzing you about how to create a text box. It's going to be a lot of stuff about the latest HTML5 features that you need to know, the new CSS3 options, rounded corners, gradients, shading, and so on, that you should expect on that particular exam. The 481 and 482 exams, 7481 and 7482, those are going to be, again, testing you much more specifically on the Windows Store aspects. So That's going to be more about, okay, I'm developing for the Windows Store, what is specific that I need to know for the Windows Store. So again, snap views, search contracts, share contracts. That's going to be on the 481 and 482 exam. Again, you can take them in any order you want. So I'll make some suggestions which one you should do first. When you pass all three of them, then you can go ahead and you will have your MCSD. If you're going to go with the MCSA, then again, still 3 exams. There is a bit of a pattern here. There's a 410 exam, which is really about installing and the different options you can choose when installing Windows Server 2012 and configuring Windows Server 2012. You know, different types of users, different types of privileges, different network options. The 7411 is going to be more questions about administering, and 412 is going to be advanced configuration, so more obscure scenarios. You'll probably have to study a fair bit for that 412 exam unless you've actually had an internship where you're working with Server 2012. And once you pass all 3 of those exams, then you have your MCSA on Windows Server 2012. So the unusual question everybody sort of comes up with once they start thinking about certification, they go, wow, there's 3 or 4 exams, I can take them in any order. Which one should I do first? And what I would recommend is for the MCSD, again, start with the one that's going to be easiest for you. So if you've got a lot of experience with HTML5, start with the exam that's just about the HTML5 programming. So you don't have to think about all the Windows Store stuff. If you have a lot of experience with C#, then I would suggest start with that C# exam. You may discover that you can almost pass it cold. Because if you've already been programming in that language, you already know how to do enumerations, you know how to do it, iterate through loops. I mean, you may literally get questions about if statements on there. That won't be enough to get you through the whole exam, but some of those questions you go, oh, this is great, I know this one. So if you're really strong with one of the programming languages, take that programming language exam first. If, however, you're doing presentations on Windows 8, you've been looking up to all the cool stuff on Windows 8 and following the sessions at Build, and you start watching the sessions that come up the next Build conference, which will be going in October. We'll have some, I'm sure, some content available online. If you're stronger with the Windows 8 story, then start with the Windows 8 Develop exam. Don't do the advanced one first, but do the basic Windows 8 Development exam. So that really it comes down to what you already know more about. Pick the exam where you already have the strongest base of knowledge to do first. For the MCSA, I can't say that necessarily for this particular certification that the 410 is going to be the easiest of the 3 exams, but historically with Windows Server certifications, the installation and configuring exam is usually the easiest one. So that's usually the exam I recommend people take when they're starting any sort of MCSA or Windows Server certification. The installing and configuring one is a really good place to start out. So I would suggest starting with the 7410. Now, I'm talking specifically here about the MCSD and the MCSA, but you may be vaguely wondering, like, if there are other certifications you can earn as well. And there are lots of other Microsoft certifications out there. There's SQL Server, ASP.NET, you've got Windows Server, you've got Exchange, you've got SharePoint, Forefront. Just about every product has a certification associated with it. You can actually visit Microsoft.com/learning, and there's an option in the menu of certification by product technology, and you can go there and get a full list of every product, and if you click on a product, it tells you here are the certifications and the exams that go with those certifications for each individual product. Some of the certifications are only 1 exam. Just depends on the product you're working with and how advanced a certification you want to earn. But since you are an MSP, you get to take the exams for the MCSD Windows Store apps for free after you publish an app to the store. You can take the exams for the MCSA Windows Server 2012 for free after you've created a demo. So if you want to do one of the other exams, well, the other certifications, you have to pay for the exams. And they're $150 US each is generally the price for the exams. So you're certainly welcome to do it, but we don't give you this benefit as an MSP. We only can offer the MCSD and MCSA offerings. If you're curious about the details for how exactly do I get the voucher for the free exam, we're going to give you information about all of that coming up in October. So that information is coming. We're just sort of sorting out some of the details right now. So we have set our certification goal. It's going to be an MCSD most likely or the MCSA. The next step is to find the gaps in your knowledge. So don't spend time studying what you already know. Your Bible, what you really want to go to when you're looking up information, is going to be in the Microsoft.com/learning site. You look up your certification, you click on the exam you're going to take, and you're going to see this tab. And it gives you different options. One of the tabs is Skills Measured. And that Skills Measured is actually going to give you a bullet point list of everything on the exam. They're not actually out to make it impossible to pass the exam. There's no great secret about what's in the exam. They give you a bullet point list right there. You want to know what's on the exam? Go look, Microsoft.com/learning, look up your certification, and then just go to the Skills Measured tab. They'll even give you a percentage weight of the different topics, which can be very useful because sometimes there might be 6 topics listed, and you're like, well, I know that one really well, I know that one really well, and I don't know these 3 areas, but I've only got 2 days to study. Well, if one area is worth 5% and the other area is worth 20%, I know where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time studying. So take a look at those percentage weights as well. It's a really great way to go and prepare for your exam. Now, got a couple of tips for you. When you're looking at that list of topics, there's a couple of things to watch for. One of the things I've learned, because I've taken a lot of certification exams over the years, is watch out for new features. I mentioned this already around the HTML. I can pretty much guarantee there's going to be a fair number of questions about HTML5 specific features on that exam. Why is that? Well, think of it this way. If I was writing a SQL Server exam on the database, and I was making an exam for SQL Server 2012, I don't want somebody who's an expert on SQL Server 2008 to be able to walk in and pass the 2012 exam, because it's an exam on 2012. So how do I write an exam that somebody who's an expert on 2008 can't pass by just walking in the door? You have to ask a lot of questions about what's new to make sure that somebody who's certified on the latest product understands what's in that latest product. They still have to know the basics, but you're going to give them just a few extra questions about the new stuff to make sure they played with the new product. So as a result, anytime you take a certification exam, the questions tend to be a little bit heavy on the new features. So if you're reading through a list, bullet point list of what's on the exam, and you go, oh, that's new, I haven't heard of that before, make a note of it. I bet you'll see a question on that on the exam. Another little trick, and I don't know why this is the case, but this has been true on almost every exam I've ever taken. Anytime they mention a command line tool in the bullet point list, I always seem to get a question about it on the exam itself. Maybe it's because the exams are multiple choice, and maybe it's easy to make a multiple choice question about the command line tool. On the other hand, maybe it's just really important to be aware. We get in the habit sometimes of always working with graphical interfaces. So maybe it's just a really good thing that we're aware of the command line options for how to work with a tool. But if they mention a command line tool, even if you've never used it before, at least take a minute, go on TechNet or MSDN and read that one page that describes what that tool does and the most common options you would set when using that tool. That's usually enough to get you through the exam question on it. So if they mention any command line tools, go read, take 5 minutes just to study what that command line tool does. That'll probably be enough. Another awesome tool to figure out what you don't know is to actually look at practice tests. Microsoft actually has 2 partners they work with in terms of practice exams. They're called Self-Test and MeasureUp. And what they do is they actually create simulated tests. They do charge for them. I actually have paid for those exams myself, and I generally find it worth it. I'm not going to say that doing a practice test lets me go from, oh, I would have totally failed the exam to I would now ace the exam, but you need a 700 score to pass. And I would say that going through a practice exam might take me from 500 to 700 by using those to prepare. So it can make the difference between a pass or fail when you're trying to prepare. Now, what's cool about the practice tests is when you load them and you go through the practice test, when you're done, it actually gives you a score sheet. And on that list of skills measured, remember I mentioned it would give you different categories that were going to be on the exam. When you do the practice test and you're done, it actually comes back to you and says, in each of those areas, here's how you scored. So you might discover, wow, I got all the questions right in this area, and I got nothing right in this area, or only one question right in this area. Now, when I've got time to study, I know which area I need to spend my time studying. So I find that little summary at the end of, in this area you scored really well, in this area you scored really poorly, helps me to focus where I want to study when I'm now ready to spend an hour or 2 hours studying. Now, there is one little caveat here. These certifications that we're looking at are very, very new. Some of the exams are just coming out of beta, which means they're just going live right now. And the companies that make the practice tests can't really produce the practice test until after the exam goes live. So that means right now, if you go to the self-test website, the Measure Up website, and you search for, let me find a practice test on the HTML5, it may say, we don't have one. That's just because they're really new. But keep in mind that this process, in 1 month, there may be practice tests. So when you're ready to prepare for that exam, go take a look and see if there is a practice test available. So right now, you may not find one, but in a month, it might be there. It just depends. These are partners. They choose when the exams go live in terms of the practice test, so you have to be a little bit flexible there. But if they are available, they're a fabulous tool. I really like them. Oh, this is another thing. If you use the practice test partners, they have a money-back guarantee. They actually tell you, if you pass this exam 2 times or 3 times in certification mode with 100%, we guarantee you'll pass the exam or you'll get your money back. Now, that certification mode they tell you about, it's nice what they offer, this money-back guarantee, but for me, when I'm using a test, I want to use it to help me prepare for the exam. And one of the options you have when you execute these practice tests is something called a study mode or a learn-as-you-go mode or a learning mode. And you'll actually see it when you launch the practice test. There'll be this option of certification mode or study mode or something like that. When you do it in certification mode, it actually simulates the exam environment. So it'll give you a timer, and you answer every question, and when you've done the whole exam, it just tells you your score. If you choose the study learning mode, then what happens is you do a question, and you have the option of saying, so tell me, did I get it right or wrong? So you'll say, like, learn or answer now. And it will pop up and say, oh, you got this question right, or you got this question wrong. And then at the bottom of the page, it actually explains why A was right, why B was wrong, why C was wrong, and why D was wrong. So that way, I'm learning right from wrong. I'm figuring out if I got the questions right, but I'm also getting a chance to study as I go. Because I'm actually reading on, oh, that's why it's B, not C, even as I'm going through the practice test. And that's just a great way to go through a practice test and figure out what you do and don't know and study at the same time. So if you do invest in a practice test, always use the study or learning mode. There's really not a lot of reason to use the certification mode except for the money-back guarantee. Once you've figured out what you don't know, the next challenge is to fill the gaps of what you don't know. So let's talk a bit about some of the resources that are out there to help you study. And when you're looking at any particular exam, how do you figure out what resources are out there to help you prepare? So we go back to Microsoft.com/learning, and you look up your exam by certification, click on the exam, you'll bring up these tabs. This time we're going to choose the tab called Preparation Materials. And what you're going to see there is literally a list of here are the materials we know are out there right now that you can use to help you prepare. It's just great. It says, boom, here's the stuff you can go study. What types of resources are you going to see listed? You might see a learning plan. Learning plans are actually created by the Microsoft Learning team. And what they do is they actually hire sort of experts in the field, and they say, hey, you go out there. You look at the articles that are out there, materials, articles on MSDN, white papers, and so on, that you think somebody trying to learn this technology would find useful. So somebody's gone out there, done the searching, dug through the internet, dug through TechNet and MSDN, and said, here's the stuff I think you should be able to read to. So these learning plans are great. They're literally that, a plan to learn a technology, and they're completely free. The other thing you might find is e-learning. Now, there is usually a charge for e-learning courses. There are online courses you can take. But if you watch out, sometimes when there's a brand new technology out, and these ones we're looking at are very new, a lot of times they'll have promotions when the e-learning first comes out, and you can take the e-learning courses for free. I would suggest keeping an eye on the Born to Learn blog, and the Born to Learn blog usually announces any free e-learning promotions and things like that, or you can just go to if you go to the learning plans, actually, you might see a link to e-learning. You click on it, and it'll tell you the price, and it might say, hey, it's free. So just generally there's a cost, but sometimes new ones are free for a little while. Books as well. There are lots of books out there, certainly books out there on HTML5, certainly books out there on C#, and there's already a book out there on Windows Server 2012. So yes, there are books out there. Sometimes there are some free ebooks. Keep your eye again on the Born to Learn blog. That's usually where they'll announce any free ebooks that come out from Microsoft Press. Otherwise, if you want to take an exam, if I was taking the Windows Server 2012 exam, I'd spend the $45 and get the book, either ebook or hardcover, but it is valuable to have a resource to go and read through. So books are definitely a resource. MSDN and TechNet. A lot of times when I'm reading through the what's on the exam skills measured, it might mention a programming feature I don't know. I'll go look on TechNet, I'll look up that feature on TechNet, read 2 pages and go, okay, I get it. I understand what it's for now. And a lot of times that's all I need to do. And for some of the exams, the more popular ones, you'll actually get exam guides. So they're actually books that are designed to prepare you for the exam that contain practice questions right inside them. There aren't any published for the exams we've been talking about yet, but those may come out soon and could be available for you. So sometimes you'll actually find exam guide books that are specifically designed to prepare you for an exam. You will generally have to pay for them, but they can be, of course, a good resource as well. Now, these are brand new exams. Windows 8 Store, Windows 8 hasn't even dropped yet. It's not even going to go live till October 26th. So, of course, there's not a ton of stuff out there right now in terms of books you can buy, courses that are out there on Windows 8. So now what? I decide I want to get the exam, the MCSD certification or Windows Server 2012 certification. I go to the preparation materials and it says there are no materials. Now what? All right. Then I'm going to go back to that skills measure tab, and that's going to be a checklist. And I'm just going to read through it and look at what it says I need to know. And then, you know what? I'm pretty much going to bing it. I'm going to go and do an internet search for those different features. I'm going to look on MSDN, look for results that are on MSDN that explain that feature, on TechNet. I'm going to look for blog posts that are really well written. Dev.windows.com is particularly good if you're doing anything around the Windows 8 exams. For HTML5 and C#, there are lots of books and web resources out there that will explain, how do you use the video tag in HTML5, or how does asynchronous programming in C# work. You're going to be able to find lots of blog posts and content out there and stuff like that. And do keep an eye out. There's the link on here if you download the presentation later for the Born to Learn blog, where you'll often find some free ebooks that you can use for resources as well, or free e-learning. This is actually, I did a little digging before this presentation. If you're going to work on that MCSD with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right now there's actually a free ebook you can download on programming Windows 8 apps. So that would be a great resource that you can download right now for free. So that's a good one to look at. For a Windows Server 2012 MCSA, I found there's some hands-on labs, some first look clinics, which is kind of like an e-learning course, and some great videos that explain a lot of the Windows Server 2012. Any of these is going to be great preparation for the MCSA exams. So there's some good free resources for those as well for you. Those learning plans I mentioned, they're a great resource. If I go to the learning catalog, and there's a link to it here on the slide, so again, if you download the slide deck later, which you're welcome to do, follow that link, it'll take you to a learning catalog, and you can search for a technology. So I can say, search for C#, and it'll come back and say, hey, here are the resources we recommend for you to learn C#, and there'll be different types of resources. Some of them free, some of them paid, but there will be free resources as well. Or you could search for Windows Server 2012. And it'll say, well, here's some books we recommend, here's some articles we could recommend that you can use to prepare and to study. So those learning plans are a great little resource. Not enough people know about these. They're a great resource. Whether you're learning for an exam or just learning because you're trying to figure something out, the learning plans are a great feature. And it's that learning catalog is a link to here. That's where you'll find the learning plans. Another thing to help you fill the gaps in your knowledge, if you have a practice test, this is a great feature. You can actually customize the practice test. So let's say I go through a dry run and I do the practice test and I do like 40 questions, and at the end it says, oh, you did really well in this topic but not so well in this topic. What I can then do is I can then restart the exam and say, give me every question you've got on that one topic where I was having trouble. And that'll sort of quiz me, and as I'm quizzing, I'm using that study mode, so it's giving me answers as I go, and that way I'm really focusing in on that one weak area, so that I can strengthen and fill the gaps of my knowledge in that 1 week area. So you can customize a practice test. Say, give me all the questions on asynchronous programming. Give me all the questions about the localization options. And you can do that on the practice test. So that's a very useful thing to do once you're really, I do this usually like when I'm just a day or two before the exam to sort of say, you know what, I got an hour, I'm just going to give myself a bunch of questions on one topic and make sure I know that topic well. Once you've filled in those gaps, now you're ready to think about taking the actual exam. All right. Now, how do you register for the exam? First simple thing, there is a website, prometric.com. Prometric is the company that manages the exams and where you take all the exams. When you actually register for the exam, you'll be asked to choose the testing center where you're going to take the exam. So there are actually physical locations. You can't just do this online. There are physical testing centers where you have to go to take the exam. And when you go to that website, you can say, I live in this country, I live in this city, and it'll say, here's the exams testing centers near you. You pick the center, and then it pops up a calendar for you telling you when there are time slots and what days and what times are available for you to take that exam. What I would recommend is if you decide you're going to get the certification, book a date and time and before you even start studying, because it gives you a deadline. If you go, yeah, I'll get around to it, I'll do that later, when my midterms are done or whatever, we all know how things go. You forget about it, you don't get around to it. Whereas if you say, all right, you know what, I'm going to schedule it for December 28th. That way when I'm done all my exams at school, I'm going to have a week to study for it, and then I'm just going to go take the exam. Maybe that's what you decide. But giving yourself a deadline is always a good idea. You're much more likely to take the exams if you give yourself a deadline by booking it. You can reschedule it, I think, if you change the date. I think it's 48 hours before. So if you do suddenly go, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do this, as long as you reschedule, I think it's 48 hours before, there's no penalty and you can just move the exam date. When you book the exam, you'll get an email that explains all the rescheduling guidelines. Some of these exams that are required for certifications are still in beta, but by the end of October, in beta means right now they're still actually testing the exams. They're actually getting people to test the questions and make sure they're fair questions and figure out what's, if they're well written, if there's typos and things like that. So it's possible that if you went right now to try and book one of the exams, it might not be listed. You might not be able to book it. But I think almost every one of these exams will be available by the end of October. So chances are by the time you're ready to take these exams, you'll be able to schedule them. When you actually go to a physical testing center, you have to arrive 15 to 30 minutes before the exam itself starts. You have to bring photo ID to prove you are who you are. They want to make sure you don't send your friend to take the exam for you. Get a good night's sleep. I would not recommend staying up till 3 in the morning studying. I know you guys are students, you may be good at this. I'm too old for that now. But getting a good night's sleep will usually pay off more than staying up till 2 in the morning studying. So do get a good night's sleep before you take that exam. It is closed book. They will ask you to leave your cell phones, your mobile devices, and so on at the door. There's actually going to be a camera monitoring you when you take the exam. They take this very seriously because a certification wouldn't have a lot of value if people could cheat. So this way we know when you pass that exam, it's because you knew the content on that exam. And that's what gives the certifications value. So yes, these exams are taken very seriously, and that's what gives them value. So absolutely said no cell phones. It said there's a video monitoring you when you're taking the exam and so on as well. You do get, you're not allowed to bring things into the exam room, but they do give you at least a sheet so you can take notes. Because sometimes when you're reading a question, I know I like to sometimes sort of work it out on paper or make notes to myself as I'm doing the exam. If I remember something, I want to jot it down. So you do get either a piece of paper and a pen, or sometimes they give you like a plastic sheet and a whiteboard marker that you can then erase to take notes during the exam. One tip I do have, sometimes an exam will have something. It'll ask a simple question. There was an exam I took where it had questions about the trace levels you could choose when doing debugging. And I had to remember like trace level 0, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And one level was errors information, one was errors and warnings, and one was information only, and one was trace turned off. And I always had trouble remembering if 0 was no tracing or 0 was the most tracing and all the different settings. So it was just these 4 things I had to just memorize. So what I did is I kept having trouble remembering them. So what I did is I had them written on a piece of paper, and I went to go schedule, and I checked into my exam and gave them my ID, and I'm looking at the piece of paper reviewing those 4 things over and over, going, got it. Then, of course, I can't take that piece of paper in the exam room. Crumple up the piece of paper, throw it away. They take me in the exam room, and I took my piece of paper they gave me and immediately wrote them down while I still remember them. And sure enough, when I got the question, about 10 questions later, I'm like, aha, I wrote those down for myself when I came in while I still remember them. So just a little tip that can be useful if there's something you're having trouble remembering. When you start the exam itself, do not panic. You're not going to get 100% on this exam. You won't. I will be very shocked. In fact, Microsoft gets worried if too many people get 100% on the exam. They start thinking somebody cheated, made a copy of the exam, and posted it on the internet somewhere. So we don't want you getting 100% of the exam. We want you to pass if you studied, but we do not expect people to get 100%. So that might be different than what you're used to, perhaps, if you're a really great student. But but don't panic. You'll be doing the exam, and one of the secrets about Microsoft exam, it's not, it's not secret, it's not that I'm not allowed to tell you, but it's something a lot of people don't realize. The pass mark for an exam is 700. So people go, oh, so that's 70%. I'm like, not necessarily. The way it works is when they come up with a new exam, they actually do this beta testing, which we're doing right now for some of the HTML5 exams. And what happens is during beta testing, they get, say, 1,000, 500, 200, I don't know the exact number, but they get a whole bunch of developers to come and take the exam. And then they look at it and go, so what happened? And these developers all take the exam and they go, wow, every single developer failed. Oh my gosh, we made this exam too hard. Or, oh my gosh, everybody who took this exam got 95%. We made this exam too easy. So what they'll do is they might change some of the questions, take a few out, put some new ones in. And the other thing they might do is say, you know what? Since everybody failed, let's make the pass mark 60%. So 700 might be 60%. Or if everybody did really well, they might say, we're going to make the pass mark 80%. So 700 points might actually be an 80% mark. It depends on what happened during the beta testing. So they're really trying to sort of standardize it based on real programmers took this exam, how did they do? And based on that, they figure out what's a reasonable pass mark. They always say 700, but just so you know, 700 is not necessarily 70%. And that's why I say never, ever panic on an exam. Because maybe if you go through the first 5 questions and you get them all wrong, and you're going, I have no idea what this answer is. I don't know this question at all. And you're going, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail the exam. I have had that happen to me, where the first 5 questions in a row, I'm like, I have no idea, I have no idea, no idea. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to fail. And you know what? I passed. Maybe it's because I knew the next 5 questions. So never give up halfway through the exam. Finish the exam. You never know. I have taken exams where I was convinced there's no way I was passing, and I got 700 on the dot, or 730, or 710, and then, oh, after all, I passed. You don't lose points for answering a question wrong. So instead, if all else fails, at least just guess an answer. Never give up halfway through. Keep going. Hey, you're in there. You've made the effort to come finish the exam. So never panic just because you hit a few questions in a row and you don't know the answer. Maybe you're doing one of the tough ones and you only need 60% to pass. There are going to be some similarities you see in all the exams you take. Exams will generally be between 40 and 60 questions. They're going to be multiple choice. And the pass mark is 700. Though, as I mentioned, 700 is not actually 70% based on that beta testing. You'll have between 1 and 4 hours to complete the exam. Generally, you don't need 4 hours to do it. I have never had someone tell me I would have passed it if only I had more time. So most people finish it in sort of that 2-hour type time frame. It's a typical sort of time to finish an exam. But you'll have somewhere between 1 and 4 hours to complete the exam. There are a few exams out there that actually have simulations where it will actually spin up a virtual machine and it'll say, please do the following task. And when they do that, it's actually, they don't care how you complete the task. It actually will be scored based on the state of the VM when you're finished. So it will actually, so whether you use command line to do it or whether you use GUI to do it doesn't actually matter. So when they do those simulations, it's based on the end state of the virtual machine when you've completed the task. So most of the exams, though, are just multiple choice. Don't think there's any simulations on the MCSA or MCSD exams at the moment. Every now and then, I've had this happen to me before, I'll be on a question, and at the bottom, you answer the question, and at the bottom, there's a previous and a next button to navigate between the questions. And every now and then, I'll answer a question, I'll look down, and the next button is grayed out. It's not enabled. And I click on it and nothing happens, and that's when you start to panic going, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with the computer and I'm going to have to reschedule the exam and I was all ready to take it today. No. By law sort of thing, there's a requirement that they have to make sure you've read the entire question. Sometimes you look at the question, you look at A and you go, A's right, click, I know it's A. But maybe because of the screen resolution, to read the entire D, you would have to scroll down a little bit. The next button won't be enabled until you scroll to the bottom of the screen. So that's just one of those things to watch for. If you ever see the next button's not enabled, scroll down. And I bet suddenly the next button will get enabled for you. So that's just a little tip because I've seen people freak out a bit with that. Yes, another thing a lot of people wonder is, okay, if I'm going through the questions, when I finish the exam, can I go back and change my answers? Absolutely. So you go through the questions, and there's even the ability to mark a question for review. So there's a question you're looking at going, I think I want to come back to that one later. There's a little checkbox you can say to do mark for review. And then when you've finished all the questions, it'll bring up a summary screen that lists all the different exam questions, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you mark them for your review, you'll see the little check marks. And then you can just go click on those, go back and check the exam, what questions you wanted to go back to. So, if it's like, well, if I have time, I'll come back to this question, you can absolutely mark them for review and come back to them. Another thing to keep in mind is the 80-80 rule. Microsoft exams are actually designed to test you on the 80% of the features that are used 80% of the time by 80% of the developers. It wouldn't be helpful to have an exam that just tested you on a bunch of weird, obscure features. Because if I'm a developer and I'm going for a job at a company and I say, hey, I have my MCSD on Windows 8 Store, and then you walk into that and the only stuff you know is weird, obscure features, but you don't really know how to build an app, what value is that certification? So the exams, sometimes people sort of go, oh, they're going to ask me all these trick questions on the exam. Actually, no. We've told you what's on the exam. We want to test you on what we think developers need to know to build Windows Store apps. That's what's going to be on the exam. They do follow this 80-80 rule when they develop the questions. So, as I said, they're not out to get you. It's not out to be trick questions. We're really trying to make sure that if you take the exam, you know what a developer should know, or for Windows Server 2012, you know what an administrator should know to be able to do this job. Because then the certification has value. A manager hiring you with that certification says, I know you're going to know how to get going with Windows 8 or Server 2012 because you have that certification. Otherwise, the certification itself wouldn't have value. That wouldn't be good for anyone. You'll see a sort of standard structure to the actual questions themselves when you're reading them. They usually start off with, you are working at the XYZ toy company as a Windows Server 2012 administrator. You need to upgrade from Windows Server 2008 to Server 2012. What should you do? It's usually going to be something like that. So it'll always sort of start off with a little bit of a background, then there's going to be some sort of problem statement of what has to happen, and it'll finish with, what should you do, or you need to do the following. And then you'll see your multiple choice list of answers. And there will be one or more correct answers, and there will be incorrect answers. There's no partially right questions. It's either right or it's wrong. So there's no half right, half wrong questions. Having said that, they may say there are two answers that are correct. Each one is correct all by itself. So there might be two correct answers. If that's the case, they're going to tell you, pick the two correct answers. Or they might say there's two answers that together form a solution, in which case you have to pick the two answers that together would accomplish the goal. But there aren't any trick questions, but instead there might be some where you have to choose multiple answers to get the correct answer. So there's different ways that they can ask you to provide the answers. Said there's multiple choice single answer. That's what you can encounter the most often, where literally it just says, what's the right answer? A, B, C, or D. And you have to figure out which one is right. Sometimes it's multiple answer. Pick the two correct answers, or pick the two answers that together form the answer. You might get hot area questions where it shows you like a screenshot, and it says, you are looking at this property page. Which of these properties should you set, or which radio button should you choose? And you actually click on the screenshot on the area you would have to change if the actual screen was presented in front of you. You might get drag and drop questions where it says, over here is a list of properties. Drag and drop the properties over that you think would need to be modified to achieve this goal. So you have to drag over each of the properties. Another one I'm seeing more of lately is build, list, and reorder questions, where they say, I need to support video on my HTML5 page. What are the steps I need to do? And it might list 5 or 6 steps on the left-hand side. And maybe I need to do 4 of those steps. So I have to drag the right steps over, and I have to put them in the right order. So you'll see those as well. Every now and then you might get some case studies. I haven't seen too many exams of those recently, but sometimes they will give you sort of 2 pages of notes that you can scroll through, and then you pop up the question itself, or there might be a pop-up display with a bit of a case study in the background that can help you answer a question. So it is possible in a pop-up screen or a screen before a set of questions that you might get a bit of a background case study. And that's when the note sheets are really useful, because you can make notes as you're looking at the case study, but you can go back and forth between the question and the case study as much as you want. There are a few strategies I'd like to share with you when you're answering questions, because every now and then there are some basic tips you can use. You guys are probably pretty good at this. I find that students have their own tricks for getting through exams. I've developed a few techniques to get through these exams myself as well. Rule number 1, eliminate wrong answers. I used to write practice tests, and when I wrote practice tests, I discovered it wasn't hard coming up with questions. You know what was hard? Making up wrong answers. It's actually really hard to come up with 3 wrong answers that sound believable. So sometimes you look at a question and you look at one of the answers and go, that just doesn't make sense at all. Maybe it's right. No, we're not trying to trick you. Honestly, it may just be it was somebody like me making up the question. That was the best wrong answer I could come up with, but I know you know that's wrong. So if you look at the answers and you go, D's wrong, D probably is wrong. So if you really don't know the right answer, take a look. Maybe you can see one that at least you know, well, I know that one's wrong. Well, now if you guess, you have a 1 in 3 chance instead of a 1 in 4 chance. That's a good thing. When you get code snippets, place spot the differences. You ever seen those puzzles where they give you 2 pictures and you have to find what's different between the 2 pictures? When they give me A, B, C, D, and they're 4 big chunks of code, I could spend 20 minutes trying to read through all that code sometimes, it feels like. What I do is I look through and I go, what's different between A and B? What's different between B and C? What's different between C and D? And when you really get into it, a lot of times you discover there's only one little part. It's 10 lines of code, but there's only one thing different between A, B, C, and D. So I don't need to understand all the code I see in front of me. All I need to do is figure out the difference between the code. And then out of those differences, I go, well, why would it be that option instead of that option? Why would they say set the property to true instead of set the property to false? And I have to go, well, that would do this instead of that. Ah, okay, now I get it. As long as I understand what that property does, I'll be able to pick the right answer. I don't need to understand all the code and spend all the time deciphering the entire code snippet. So when you get code snippets, focus in and figure out what's different between the answers. You don't necessarily have to decipher the entire code itself. Another one I like to look for is when they give you multiple answer questions where they say, pick the 2 that are correct. If I'm not sure what the answer is, I'll look for 2 answers that can't possibly both be right. So if one example, answer A says set security to public, and answer B says set security to private, well, I know the answer isn't A and B, because you couldn't possibly set security to public and security to private. It's going to be one or the other. So that's a little trick I use occasionally as well to narrow down which question might be right. When in doubt, this is another one of those secret tricks we all use, it's probably the new feature. Because again, remember I said that typically on an exam, they're going to focus on the new features. So when I'm totally stuck on a question, if one of the answers says use this feature, and I know that's a new feature, I just go, yeah, it's probably that one. Because obviously, they would want me to know what the latest features do, so there's a good chance they're going to try and highlight one of the new features on an exam question to make sure I know it. So I've actually used that to my advantage sometimes, and when I really had no idea what the answer was, I said, oh, that's a new feature, maybe it's that one. So it's one of my little secrets. And when in doubt, always guess. Right? You don't lose points for wrong answers. So if you don't know the answer, put down something. Never leave a question blank. Your first guess is probably right. If you are guessing, usually stick with your first instinct. Usually if you go back and change it, your first answer was right. And if there is a question you really, really don't know, use that mark for review checkbox. Every now and then, you'll get to question 7 or 17, and you'll read the question and go, wait a second, this code snippet mentions that feature, they were asking me about back in question 2. So sometimes when I'm reading question 17, it helps me figure out the right answer to question 2. So every now and then, a later question will help you figure out an earlier question. Just once in a while, you can get 1 or 2 points that way. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys a couple of sample questions. Now, I have deliberately given you questions here that have nothing to do with these exams, because I want to help you think about those strategies we were just talking about and how we could use them if presented with a question where we go, I have no idea what the answer is. I'm going to help you get good at guessing. You are a database administrator for a company. Your company stores all its product data in SQL Server 2008 database named products. Eric is a user in my database, and he complains he cannot access the tables created by another user, Adam, through a stored procedure. So he's got a stored procedure that's accessing some tables. But Adam can access all the tables through the stored procedure. You need to ensure that Eric can access the data while minimizing excessive permissions. And here are my choices. And I know you guys don't know SQL Server. And here are my choices I get. I could grant the create table permission to Eric. I could get Adam to recreate the stored procedure with an option set. I could grant DB owner to Eric. Or I could ask Adam to recompile the procedure with another option. I'm going to ask you for a second. Are there any answers here that you think, oh, that can't be right? And I bet every one of you can eliminate at least one of those answers. DB owner. That's grant the owner role to Eric. All I want him to be able to do is run a program, a stored procedure, that'll create a table for him. If I give him an owner role, that seems a little excessive if all I want him to be able to do is run a program properly. So it is not C. Grant him the create table permission. I want to give him the permission to do a command. Well, he could create any table with that command. They specifically said, let him do it, but minimize permissions. One of the things I've learned is the answer is almost never give them administrator rights. Generally not a best practice. So it's not A and it's not C. In this case, the correct answer is actually, oh, that's nice. That should actually be D. I forgot to move the checkbox down when I changed the formatting. So the answer is actually D, ask Adam to recompile the stored procedure with the execute as owner clause. That's a feature that says, when I run the program, give me the same permissions as the person who created the program. But said, even though you knew nothing about it, I suspect you guys would have guessed it's not A or C. And now you've got a 50-50 chance of guessing the right answer. Here's another sample question. You're an administrator of Varagon, and the workstations have upgraded to Windows 7, and you need to control the DLL files users can upload on their workstations. How can you ensure only approved DLL files are loaded? And I really don't know that much about this product, but here I go and I get all these questions and all these answers that I can choose from. And you look at this and it says choose 2. Each correct answer is part of the solution. This falls into the category of, I've got a secret to tell you. There's a new feature that was in this product called App Blocker. So when in doubt, pick the new features. The correct answer for this question is A and B. If I hadn't known what the correct answer was, I might have guessed App Blocker because I knew App Blocker was a new feature. So this is one of those ones where I go, well, App Blocker's new, maybe this A and B. And in this case, that would have worked. Doesn't work all the time, but sometimes. Here's another one. You're an Exchange administrator. And again, I am not an Exchange person. You guys are not Exchange experts. For Nutex Corporation. And I want to create a mailbox for the projector so that users in the company can request its use. I need to create a mailbox with the least number of steps. So I want to create a mailbox for the projector. And it goes, here's my options. And you look at this and go, look at that code. Man, do I choose projector-alias? And you start reading and go, wait a second. This is when we want to do the spot the differences. Because if you look closely, the only difference between these is A says, says dash equipment, B is dash room, C is dash equipment, D is dash room. Oh, wait a second. That's the only difference between those ones. And the other difference is whether or not I specify the one of the principal names. So in the end, I go, well, a projector would be equipment, not a room, so it's probably A or C. And now if I can just figure out the differences between A and C, it's just a question of do I have to use this to create an account name and run the script, or do I just run the script? So all I have to guess now is, do I have to create the account and then run the script, or do I just run the script? And now I've got a 50-50 chance of guessing the right answer again. So playing spot the differences really pays off with big code scripts. Again, I don't have to know SAM account names and what all these other properties are. I just have to figure out what the differences are. By the way, correct answer was C. You don't actually have to create the account first. The script does it for you. When you are done taking all the questions on the exam, you'll get a chance to review questions and change answers. And when you finish the test, right away an evaluation screen will pop up where you can fill out a basic survey about what was the exam like. Then, after the evaluation, you'll actually see a screen pop up, and hopefully that screen says, you passed. That's what we're all hoping for. And you'll actually see your total score for each of the subject areas. Even if you don't pass, do make sure you pick up your score sheet when you leave the exam. The person you signed in with will actually have a printout for you that you can take with you. And that's proof that you passed the exam. And if you didn't pass the exam, it'll show you your total score in the different areas, so you know what you need to study if you come back and take it again. If you do pass, then a couple of weeks later, you'll get an email telling you, congratulations, you passed an exam, you're now a Microsoft Certified Professional, you'll get access to some websites and some information because you're now one of those people working on your certification, and we're welcoming you to that certified community. When you pass, one of the questions you get is, are you certified forever? The newest certifications do now actually expire, so you are required to recertify every so often. I think the current certifications is 3 years. Don't quote me on that one. So yes, you will eventually have to recertify because it's just because the technology changes. So we want to make sure if you're walking out saying, hey, I'm certified to build this, that that statement is still true and still accurate from when you're making that statement. So I believe these ones expire after 3 years. And well, technology does change a little bit in 3 years. So that's quite reasonable. So now you know the steps. Choose your certification goal. Figure out the gaps in your knowledge. Then fill the gaps in your knowledge by studying effectively, and then you can go ahead and take that exam. And then you can go get certified. Good luck. I'll just take a look at the Q&A here, and there was a questions here. Is there a maximum number of free retries for the exams in case of failing? Well, in terms of free retries, there is a second shot program going on right now with Microsoft Learning. Generally, when you take an exam, we'll have all the details in October, but typically when we do sort of free exam deals, you get some sort of voucher that lets you take the exam for free once. And if you fail, usually the second time you have to pay. Having said that, keep an eye on the Microsoft Learning website. Quite frequently, they have a second shot deal. And if you register for the second shot, go read the small print. I don't know what promotions they have right now, but the second shot promotion often lets you get one free retry if you fail. So keep an eye when you're ready to take the exam. Go check the Microsoft Learning site and see if they're doing a second shot program. Register for that before you register for your exam. Then you could get a second try for free. Are there any other questions?
Hey, Susan, it's Michelle. Thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation, our nice last session for our very first ever MSP Virtual Summit. And I can't thank you enough. That was totally cool.
All right. I'll turn off the video and I'll let Andrea take over.
All right. Thank you.